Mark, is that you?
That's me.
Okay.
Hey guys,
What's going on, Mark?
how are you?
It's good to see you. It's good to hear you.
Boy, you guys are kicking the dead horse tonight, huh? I'm sorry about the Sonny Corleone analogy, but that's what
Yeah.
it feels like.
Yeah,
You
that
know what
kind
I'm
of
talking
day.
about? They shoot him 100 times, and then when he's deader than dead, just for good measure, they go up and just kick him in the head.
Oh boy.
That's what it feels like with Trooper Paul, doesn't it?
Well,
Yeah. Oh, it's horrible.
we got, as you know, we got a little video the other day of the opposition in the alternate theories, and Maz and I kind of compiled this these kind of two-part special we wanted to do, and just compare and contrast. Let's look at Arca and let's look at Trooper Paul. The other side, the guy that they roll with. This is the truth teller, and the Arca guys. Let's just dismiss them because they're just not qualified enough. So
it's embarrassing.
Yeah.
I don't think you'll see this guy at a second trial if there is one. I really don't.
I'm telling you, this is the guy that they threw in a room, and Tully and Proctor and Morrissey probably just, fingers pointing. You are going to be our guy because we did a crash reconstructionist. We know you took a couple of classes, and this is it. And that's what I feel like happened to this guy. I think literally he needs a note on his chest or something that just says "help me," or he's just winking, giving what is that, Morse code for help me.
It's unbelievable. It's actually kind of surprising that they didn't have a real pretrial hearing regarding his credentials, in which he almost certainly would have been excluded. He would have just been deemed unqualified even by this judge. I mean, nobody could seriously say that this guy's qualified as an expert.
No,
it's very surprising. They made a big deal about, I need to hear from the ARCA experts to make sure they're qualified, but not this guy. That makes no sense.
Yeah, unreal. Really, really unreal. It's okay. Well, we have our experts, but let's question ARCA. I can't believe it that people actually question it. Let me just do this. $2 Caveman says, Mark, what do you think? Mark, what do you think? Did he get 100% on his test?
He probably did, but it was probably multiple choice. So, I mean, look, this guy's probably not a terrible guy. I mean, I actually was in court the day before he testified in front of the jury when he was kind of getting grilled a little bit outside the presence of the jury, and it was embarrassing then. And we all looked at each other and said, this is only going to be worse in front of the jury. He didn't strike me as one of the bad guys per se, as much as being drafted for the shitty job that he got. Nevertheless, I mean, he went along with it and testified to stuff that he clearly could not possibly have known. He clearly was not qualified. So we shouldn't feel sorry for him for that. But I mean, it was just embarrassing. And can you imagine being a prosecutor and relying on this guy and citing his testimony with a straight face? That takes real talent.
Do you think like Lally just goes home at night after after these days in court and just probably chain smokes a pack of cigarettes? What the F is going on? I mean,
I don't know. I mean, in some sense, you have to have respect for Lally in the sense that he's willing to be the willing zombie, to come back every day with a straight face, go to work, do it, try it, and keep pressing. I mean, in some ways, that's actually impressive. I mean, I don't respect it lawyer to lawyer.
Right.
I mean, he did it every single day with this guy, with other witnesses, with everything else that went on in this trial. And he just continued to come back. It was time to make the donuts, and he made the donuts every single day. But that,
I just think that something had like a grander scale, and Mazur and I were talking about this the other night about Lally, that I just feel like something had to have been promised to him, like a higher position or a pay raise or something, to really put yourself through the brutal nature of all these witnesses and go through this trial knowing that you're just a sinking ship, dude. And then now to come back and have to go through all this again, it's unreal.
I don't know. I mean, but part of the problem is with that office is, you saw these stories and the articles about him, as well as many others, donating money, stuffing, donations in Morrissey's pockets, a guy
Mm,
who runs unopposed. And that's troubling. You don't see that anywhere else except for Brooklyn, New York. You used to see that. You don't really see it anywhere else anymore. Why would he do that? It's how are they connected? What favors are owed?
yeah.
What does that say about your loyalty? What are you promised? I don't know. It's the appearance of something that seems just not normal. That's not how DA's offices are supposed to operate, for sure.
Yeah, it's like, Shawshank Redemption when they, use the jail, prisoners to do all the road work, and they were passing, pies around and, stuffing it with money, you know what I
Is
mean?
this
It's just
is this just your way to work in an Andy Dufresne reference? Is that
yeah.
what's going on here?
Could be,
By the
but
way,
yeah.
did you know that I've been admitted in Massachusetts for 1 day pro hoc, and I'm already apparently been decreed the most unethical attorney in Massachusetts. Did you know that?
Unreal, unreal. I'm getting
Unreal.
hammered all over all over the all over X right now. Some of the most notable names on the other side have basically made fun of my appearance, said I'm one of the ugliest men on the planet,
Oh,
including one of the women that was there in the blue shirt across the street last week. So they're after me right now. So they're mad about Friday and my nice little speech that I made out there. So they're having a little bit of a meltdown right now. So they're coming in strong with a personal attack. So it's like so many. My favorite one's one of me and Tommy at Subway though, and I'm holding like a foot long sub and a Capri Sun. That one's hilarious. I love it.
Oh gosh.
I got to
Well,
tell you, I've
yeah.
never seen anything like this.
Oh, it's crazy. Yeah.
A lot of contentious litigation over the years. New York is not a nice place, not a nice jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Not a lot of nice people, but I've never seen anything like this where there is just so much nastiness
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
and more than nastiness, misery. There are so many
Oh yeah.
miserable, angry people, and they
Yeah. Yeah.
all seem to be lunatics and incels who just have so much interest in a criminal case where they dedicate their lives to it.
Yeah.
And I feel like their own frustrations in their own lives lead to this just bitterness,
Oh yeah.
anger, jealousy, nastiness, keyboard warrioring. And I've never seen it. It's crazy. It's so nasty. I've already, you know what? In 1 day since yesterday, I can't actually see that,
Yeah. It's
but
not visible. Yeah. Yeah.
I have my first parody Twitter account apparently.
Oh god.
I'm just a lawyer
You've made
representing.
it. You've made it
Yes.
now.
I mean, no, I
Yes.
feel like if you can make it there, you can make it
Make it
anywhere.
anywhere, yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I've represented many unpopular people in the past, and no one's really given a shit one way or the other.
Nuts.
And within a few hours of an announcement in representing somebody tangentially related to this Karen Reed stuff, all of a sudden there's parodies. You're a scumbag. You're unethical.
My
You're
next show that I do, I'm
uh,
literally gonna spend like a half an hour on these pics posted on it.
your
Someone goes,
your friend Andy Dufresne last night. What did she call me? A loser and a grifter.
yeah.
Which whatever. Tell me something I don't know.
She
It,
said,
it,
oof. She said, oof about me. And then someone went
Oof.
back at her and posted a picture of herself right back at him.
it's insane. All for having the temerity to have a differing opinion about a criminal case or
Yeah.
representing somebody you hate. But
Yeah.
that's what makes the system work. I mean, I know this Andy Dufresne is, a litigant in her own right. Does she have a lawyer? I mean, is there a lawyer who's willing to represent her vile nature? Somebody must be, right? She must have a lawyer. That's what lawyers do. We represent clients, and some are
Right.
popular, some are not. Sometimes you agree, sometimes you don't agree. You don't have to, even as a lawyer, necessarily agree with everything that the client does or doesn't
Sure.
do. But
Well,
You know,
I don't think these people are all bad, because they said here online about me, they said, can we start a give, send, go and buy this incel a mirror? Well, I think that's great, because, you know, my bathroom mirror is kind of getting older. And if they could actually start a give, send, go to buy me, like one of those ones that open, you can put all the, you know, the toothbrushes in there and all the deodorants. Like if they could get me, like if they could actually start that give, send, go and buy me a mirror for my bathroom, that would be great, because I probably could use one at this point. So if they could, I take back everything negative I said about it. These people are very kind. They're doing me a favor. This is great.
Let me just get to this really quick. Bring a $2 says, what if any new cards could the Commonwealth play on a retrial? Well, I can certainly tell you this. They're not calling Proctor. They're probably not going to call Trooper Paul. I mean, you know, where else are we at here? I mean, just, you're going to really go through all this shit again, and we're going to talk about the weather. We're going to talk about how many drinks people had and who was there. I mean, we're going to have to sit through 10 weeks of that again. You know, I'd love to hear both of your opinion on this, or, you know, do we kind of cut this in half from the Commonwealth and, you know, eliminate these, what was like 82 witnesses or something? I mean, it's just insane. It's insane.
Well, I don't think they can retry the case unless they get a real expert, which I don't think they can do, which is why I believe they ultimately can't seriously retry the case. They can't call Trooper Paul. He's a clown.
You're not calling Proctor.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they may very well try, although they shouldn't. I'm not even sure they can call Tully and Buchanan as well, to tell you the truth, which is an even bigger problem. But even putting that aside, you know, the ARCA people need to be they need to be challenged. And not only do they need to be challenged, they need to be defeated, in the sense, given that they have the burden of proof, they need to conclusively establish to a jury beyond a reasonable doubt that there was some kind of impact between John O'Keefe and a car. So you can't even have a battle of the experts to say, well, maybe it was this, and the ARCA guys say maybe it was that. Even if that were to happen, the DA would still lose. So realistically, they need somebody who's going to go above and beyond. The ARCA people say they're way off base, the credentials to do it, and the ability and education to explain it. I don't know how they're going to do that. And short of doing that, I don't know how they can possibly proceed, because the reality is, at a second trial, if it were to happen, the defense will have the chance to actually prep the witnesses that they did not have a chance to prep this time. They know what the cross-examination is, this, you know, this fakakta cross about, you know, what do you know about taillight pieces and this and that. Not that it was impressive the first time around, but, you know, they're going to explain it in more detail the second time around. And I just, you know, I saw your guys' show a little bit for a few minutes the other night. Didn't see the whole thing, but I saw a lot of the testimony that you were playing of some of the ARCA guys. I hadn't seen it since the trial. I saw the one guy, I forget his name, with the cannon.
Dr. Wolf.
Right. Yeah.
And I think I even commented in your comments then, watching it, saying, I can't believe that anyone with half a brain would find these guys not credible.
Yeah.
Just all disclaimers, except for the, you know, guy in the attic who apparently believed. I saw your video from NASA, like, or actually both of you on scene.
Yeah.
I think what he said, correct me if I'm wrong, is they were credentialed in terms of their education and qualifications, but they just were not credible.
That doesn't make any sense.
Which is asinine beyond belief. Those guys could not have been more credible, actually. So, you know, you put it all together, you say, what can they do differently? Get an expert who's going to destroy the ARCA guys, and short of that, they can't win, they can't proceed. They're not going to get an expert because the ARCA people are at the top of their game. No scientist is going to challenge that. And to me, this is just an exercise in nothing. She's never getting convicted of anything.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Mark, let me ask you a question. You know, and Mazur and I talked about this last night on the ARCA show. Was that last night or the night before? I can't remember. Was it last night? It was the night before.
Monday
anyway.
Night. Yeah.
Monday night.
Week's gone by quick.
Yeah. So I have a question. Do you think this time around it would help, if we do happen to go into trial again? Do you think it would help to give a visual representation from ARCA and show an actual reconstruction so the jury can see that. I felt that that was a miss in the last trial. It was something that I was waiting for, and it didn't happen, and I was kind of like slightly disappointed. But do you think that, like I said, a visual or a representation of the experimentation that they did to show the jury could possibly help?
Well, so first thing I would say is they didn't have the ability to do it because they had no chance to meet with these people and prep them. So I would say that the defense had no opportunity to even do that.
Sure.
As you know, the witnesses were essentially under embargo until the trial. They had no right to meet with them, prep them, do anything
Right.
other than view their report. Having said that, I think that will not be the case the second time around. I think that protective order would be lifted. They'll be allowed to meet with them, prep them, and certainly if there's a chance to do a visual that is scientifically appropriate and
Yeah.
matches the testimony, I would say absolutely they should do it. Assuming it's admissible, assuming it's appropriate. I mean, visuals are always more powerful than words,
Of
clearly.
course. Especially in today's world.
Yeah. So they have the opportunity to do that. And again, I can't in my mind, at this exact moment, envision what that would be. I assume it would not be like a Toyota Prius with somebody facing the wrong direction, lying on the street, like we saw in court TV. But if they were able to do a real reconstruction based upon what the hypothesis is, which is all they could do, because again, they don't have any firsthand knowledge. So it would all be on theory and explain why it wouldn't be or what would be. Yeah, they should try to do that, assuming they can.
Yeah. Real quick, Jody's asking a question, Mark, and just get your answer on this. Do you think the Mass State Police is only announcing internal investigations to save face?
I don't know, but I don't know. I feel like these guys are actually in trouble.
Yeah.
Proctor, I think clearly is dead man walking. He's toast. The other guys, I don't know what they're under investigation for, but Mazza, you'll remember this when we were talking to Todd McGee a week or so ago, who certainly understands the state police protocol more than anyone. I asked him this specifically, what he thought about it. Did it just relate to text messages or more? And he didn't know, obviously, but he seemed to believe that given the way it was announced and the press release about the investigation, that he thought that it was something a little more devious. He seemed to think it was something serious more than just getting these text messages and not responding. So I don't think it's lip service. I mean, I think these guys they're no good, right? I mean, I think it's obvious.
They're just
And
bad guys. Yeah.
I think they're bad guys. And, I mean, Proctor obviously is clearly corrupt. I don't think anybody would dispute that. Anybody sane and fair to the evidence would dispute that. And I think certainly with Buchanan, the problem with him is number one, him and Proctor are like Tweedledee and Tweedledoo.
Yeah.
They're together. They do everything together. So he's got to know what's going on. He's on the text message chain. He's involved in this ridiculous concept of recovering taillight pieces. And he's on his own when it comes to this Sallyport video, which is a disaster. So I don't know if that's what his problem is, but don't assume it's just Proctor who may be out of bounds at a retrial. And if Proctor and Buchanan are both out of bounds, if that's the case, then who's testifying about the taillight and the securing of the evidence and that sort of thing? Nobody. So, they're kind of screwed going forward, aren't they?
I'd say. And by the way, I'm gonna have Todd in my studio on Friday.
Right.
It's gonna be really good. And
He's
I
great.
really want to dig into, about what he felt, his personal feelings on the investigation and his thoughts there. So that's really great.
I'll surprise you. He's a straight shooter.
Yeah.
He's not going to crap on the state police for the
Sure.
sake of crapping on them, but he also calls a spade a spade. And I think
Sure.
and the listeners will be very surprised to hear what he thinks about how this investigation was handled, which is not a great look for the state police as an agency.
Yeah, I did a review back on, it was either August 2nd or August 3rd when he did his PBS episode with Rhode Island. I reviewed it, and then immediately that night I reached out to him and said, "Got to have this guy on my show." And just unfortunately, our schedules haven't lined up. And like I said, this Friday we'll have him on. So he's been very nice, very cordial, very open. Just like a great guy to communicate with. And he's like, "Oh no, I'm looking forward to being there Friday." So,
well, it's funny because lately we've been using a lot of wire jokes and wire analogies and comments. So let me throw one out here. Todd McGee is what they call real police.
Yeah.
Okay. He's real police. You will be very impressed with him, and the listeners will be really impressed. And anyone who's listening now should absolutely put it on their calendar. This is the kind of guy you want to hear from, because he knows how the sausage is made in the state police. He is a straight shooter. He is totally sincere. He's very, very pro police, but which also tells
good
you
police, right?
Yes. And we talked about this before. Nothing. The people who get most pissed off about bad cops and bad investigations
Good
are
cops.
real police. That's right.
Yeah.
So you're gonna like what you hear from him.
Good. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm really excited, and I have been prepping, so I'm really excited to get him here, though. But yeah, all good stuff. All good stuff. So I don't know. I mean, here we are. We're waiting for Bev's response. She again took it under advisement. How long do you think we wait here, Mark? Is this something that gets dragged out here for the next couple weeks, months? When are we going to have this response? And I'm going to tell you right now, my personal feeling in it when it comes back, it's going to be, well, because of this, because of the law, you had your time. I think we're going to get a standard response like that. What do you think?
Well, time-wise, and this is total speculation. I mean, none of us know. There's no rule on this. I mean, she could literally take as long or as little time as she wants. I would think 3 to 4 weeks. That's just an educated guess, because whatever she does, it's going to be in writing. It's going to be a written opinion. It has to be. It has to be well sourced with case law or her own thoughts, because it's going to get appealed, and you need to have a decision that the parties can look at, analyze, and tear apart and send to an appellate court. What is she going to do? You know what? I really want to get out of the prediction business. I don't know. The reality is this: the DA's argument that there's no basis to do this because this has never been done, that's kind of a weak argument, because the law is constantly evolving. There are changes in the law that occur over time for the better. New precedent is established. And in this particular situation, this is pretty much unprecedented. I mean, there's no real, the cases they're citing, the DA, they're not really on point. Okay. Jury slips on the floor. That doesn't do it. Jurors saying we can't reach a verdict, or we acquitted on this, but then a judge says, go back and deliberate more. That's not on point, because that's not a final deliberation. So the idea that they would say there's no precedent for this, you're talking about double jeopardy and trying and
walking the line, definitely
twice. So sometimes there has to be courage and new precedent to honor a constitutional right. And for those who say that's not the way the law is, we shouldn't be doing this. In 1954, there was a famous case, Brown versus the Board of Education, right? Which overturned, what was it? Plessy versus Ferguson, the famous separate but equal. Okay. The law in 1954 was separate but equal, but that was wrong. Okay. That was wrong. And even though the precedent said you could segregate, that was wrong. So what did they do? They overruled that, because the law in certain situations evolves over time. And not to compare this to segregation. I mean, that's a totally different thing. But the point is, and I thought Weinberg was really good about this, if you're willing to take jurors back to court, the DA says we don't do that, but you're willing to take them back over, well, could there have been an outside influence? Could there have been They were exposed to, extrajudicial material, media or something. How do you not take them back about could they have acquitted? I mean, certainly that's a more serious thing. And it doesn't relate to their deliberations. I thought that was a very disingenuous point that was made by the DA because I think anybody who certainly any lawyer would agree you should not be grilling jurors about why did you reach this decision.
Right.
That's totally inappropriate. Jurors have every right to stand on their decision and not have to explain it to you about why they reached a decision. But that's not what's being sought here. What's being sought here is, can you clarify if you acquitted? Number one, is that true? And number two, well, why didn't you publish it? Let's hear the answer. And maybe the answer stinks. Maybe the verdict or non-verdict doesn't get, entered. But why wouldn't anyone who has any sense of justice want to at least hear that answer? And I thought the way Weinberg phrased that is exactly the right way that, Maz, I know we talked about over the course of several weeks. Just take the evidence. Let's hear what it is. All these jurors are coming forward saying we definitely acquitted. Clearly, there was no written verdict slip that was turned in. Let's find out why. Maybe there's a good answer. Maybe there isn't. I don't know.
Right.
But why wouldn't anyone with any sense of justice want to know? And that's what's so disturbing about the Norfolk DA. They tell you with a straight face, we don't want an acquitted woman to stand trial twice, but she wasn't acquitted. But
Right.
all the evidence is actually to the contrary. And again, they're stuck on form over substance. We know all the jurors are saying she was acquitted, but they didn't turn a slip in. So, never mind the man behind the curtain, so to speak.
Yeah. Let me just pause. I'm just going to pause you really quick because Mazda does have a commitment. He's going to get out by 8, but I just want to give Maz the floor really quick just to say bye to everybody. And again, Maz, thanks for jumping on with me again tonight. I appreciate you. Sorry, Mark.
I'm done. I made my point.
Yeah.
No problem. You still have a guest, Brian, so that's good. So Mark Bederow is going to take my place. We're going to go from me and you to the three of us, and then you got Mark Bederow. So you're good. You're in great hands. So thank you for having me on. It's a great time, great show. And tomorrow, 4 p.m. in Quincy, we're having that protest for Michael Morrissey tomorrow. So it's going to be at 254 Corey Street in Quincy, Mass. You can park at the soccer field nearby. Someone also said you can park at the nearby Lincoln Hancock School, which is not in session right now. And you might be able to park right there if the parking overflows where you can't get in there. So that's about it. I'm planning probably on going tomorrow, it looks like. We'll see. And other than that, if I don't make it, have a great time, everybody out there. And let's continue to just keep the word out and ignore those trolls on X that have been coming after all of us pretty hard, and especially me. I'm being memed now. I'm actually being memed, and it looks like they're going to start a give, send, go. So this is great. I might get a new mirror. This is awesome. So it's great. They give me prizes. I have trolls that actually care about me enough to give me prizes, which is awesome.
There you go.
So, all right, guys, have a great night. Take care.
Thanks, Maz. Take care. All right. Good stuff.
It's crazy, right? All the people who attack are either angry women or incel men. It's so weird. I mean, it's just so bizarre.
It's a very bizarre thing that we're all, I guess wrapped up in now. And look, it's just, they have nothing better to do. I just say this, Mark, look, if you don't like what we're doing, well, start a channel, give us your points, let's hear from you instead of just attacking in these childish
or tune out
on X.
Or tune out, listen, don't listen, agree, disagree.
Right.
But the obsession and the anger, it's really weird. I've been doing this 26 years now, and I've never seen anything like this. There is just a cottage industry of angry people who will tell you someone is guilty. I don't know why, and it's fascinating to me because 80% of them are women, and is that because it's a female defendant?
Could be, yeah.
Very successful in life. not downtrodden, has resources. And then the other 20%, as I said, are like these, kind of weirdo, awkward incel men. So like nobody normal is, is coming after this. And why is that?
I don't know. Are we the normal ones? And if they're not,
Listen, I call, at least on this case, I mean, obviously the other one, I have a vested interest now. But, as far as relates to Karen, balls and strikes,
Yeah.
whatever. Um, and all I did when I learned about the case was look at it and analyze it. And in my view, it's a terrible case. That's not a attack on anyone. It's not a defense of anyone. I think the case against her stinks.
Yeah.
When I first analyzed it, I thought that there's no question that she would get acquitted. Then I thought, the more I looked at it, that she almost certainly was not guilty. And then when I saw even more, I think she's actually innocent. But that's my opinion. Whatever. Why that somehow translates to, grifter, idiot, scumbag, unethical, loser is beyond me. That's just my opinion. Take it or leave it. I don't really
Right.
give a shit what you people think, and whatever. I mean, it is what it is.
No, I agree. I always laugh about the whole grifting thing. They'll turn on CNN and Fox News or whatever news station they incline to watch, and they'll listen to court TV or whatever talk about these cases, and you have hosts that are on those channels getting paid, and they think like we make this like exuberant. Yeah, here you go. They think we make this exuberant amount of money. I mean, a video I might make a few pennies or a few dollars off of. But, my point of all of this is it's my passion. I love.
So what?
Yeah.
Why does that make you a grifter? I mean, the irony is, I saw, the other day, this kind of Twitter war, if you will, amongst, some of those people who are spitting at each other. And if I understood it correctly, they were accusing each other of stealing money that had been gifted to them for a free lunch after court. I mean, you want to talk about grifting, stealing.
There you go.
I mean, my God, they were literally accusing each other of seeking donations for a free lunch after going to court, and then accusing each other of stealing the lunch money. I mean, this is insanity.
I can't. I don't know, and I always sell them, like, and they get angry at me. Oh, you're only giving 25% to Karen. Well,
don't have to give
and
anything to
listen,
Karen. That's a choice.
Listen, and I was out there, not even a week and a half ago, and Karen came up to me and she said, "You don't have to do what you're doing." And I said, "But I want to help you, and that's my choice." And she said, "Well, I appreciate it, and
Okay.
and they always have this problem, only 25%. Why don't I'm like, listen,
Why do you? Who are they?
right?
To judge one way or the other, whether you give 0%, 100%, or somewhere in between. Who cares?
And then I tell them, if you don't like what I'm doing, then start a lemonade stand. I don't know what to tell you.
I don't get this whole concept of grifting.
Yeah. Listen, I've been flat out, like, we're on YouTube. I get paid. I mean, this is my second job.
You're allowed to do that, and it's no different than what these
Yeah.
other people are doing. But they get upset because people like you get people to watch.
Well,
And
I'm entertaining.
well, that's right.
People
Well,
like me.
if you have a following because you're entertaining, people like what you're saying, whether they agree or disagree.
Sure.
That's the beauty of like capitalism. If they're jealous because nobody wants to listen to them, or they're trying to run an angle, maybe as a business model, my angle is I'll be provocative and suggest that she must be guilty, and that's fine if that's your opinion. But if 7 people watch, whatever, that it is what it is. That's not a reason to get all angry and nasty and jealous and critical of other people who are doing what they're doing. I don't know why that translates to grifting, or why they all get triggered. How do you have this time to do this. It's very easy, people. It's called time management.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's called passion.
It's called time management. I'm able to manage time. I can
Right.
deal with my work, talk to you, do other things, spend time with my family, and do other things. Don't worry about it. I got it. It's good. I can handle it. It shouldn't trigger you, people. Okay. Don't watch if you're not interested. Okay.
And then I always look and I look at like the following, and it's like 11, 10. You know, I'm like, you know, 50 people are following you. It's just sock puppet accounts. That's all this is. You know, it's just sock puppet accounts. So, Gringa says, in the retrial, could the defense argue to be able to tell the jury exactly who hired the Arca guys?
Yes and no.
Mark, I got a knock. Hang on 1 second, okay? Be right back. If you want to answer that, I'll be right back. I got a knock at the door. Hang on.
Well, yeah, I mean, you would want to tell the jury that the FBI hired these guys, but the DA is going to argue that if they know the FBI was hired and was investigating, that's going to be prejudicial to the prosecution, which is a fair argument. So I think you're going to get stuck at a retrial, in essence, not being able to do that. So I don't think anything's going to change in a retrial about outing the FBI in terms of the investigation, hiring ARCA and that. And now I've been left in charge when I just checked in to say, how you guys doing? So now what? Anyway, comments? Somebody's talking about bagels. Okay. This isn't what I do, people. I'm just here. It's Yuri at the door. Okay. Anyway, no, I don't think they're going to get the FBI to be able to be outed in terms of doing anything of this. The dog, one of the dogs is under the table. One of them is in the other room. So I can tell you that. Lola is under the table. Winnie is in the other room. Okay.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. We basically just said, I don't think they're going to be able to get the FBI out there in a second trial.
It's not going to be allowed.
No, it has nothing to do with the judge being corrupt or anything like that. If a jury knew that the FBI was investigating the prosecutors, that would be terrible. Now, practically speaking, they know because the prospective jurors are all watching everything going on now. So unlike the first trial, the amount of media that they're going to be exposed to, prospective jurors for a second trial, is so much more. I would be stunned if they weren't just aware of it going forward. So that's a win for the defense in that sense.
Michelle says, imagine telling Mark Bederow how to spend his time.
Listen, we all have things to do. I don't mind doing this. I don't get paid for this. I don't want to get paid for this. I get paid by clients to do work. As you said, don't worry about my time. If I don't have time, I won't do it. If I can't do it, I can't do it. If I can, I can. If that triggers you, well, too bad. Get a life. I don't know what else to say.
So what do you think happens with all this fallout? I mean, we're hearing, like, and I want to go back to Jody's question. You know, she asked, do you think that this is just to save face? I mean, you're hearing things, and, you know, we're hearing our governor say, you know, we got to get out there and have, you know, police reform, and it looks like there's a couple of bad eggs in our departments. We have to fix it. To me, Mark, I feel like it's just like, again, saving face with the public, but there's no real action. And I keep calling for that on my show. You know, I said, look, you know, the governor gets out there when a new story about this drops. We have corruption. You know, we had the CDL scam. We have now the stuff with Karen Reed, and there's been numerous scandals over the last couple of years here. But it's like talk and no action. You know, what are we to do here? What's going to happen?
I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, ultimately, I think if you're the governor, the first question is going to be, do we get rid of the so-called colonel, right? You know, you get rid of the top or not. I think what practically speaking will happen is this cesspool of troopers that live in the Norfolk DA's office have got to be disbanded. I mean, this arrangement that they have, I would assume is going to be disbanded. And the real question is, will that happen before or after a potential retrial? I don't know. But, they've already gotten rid of Proctor. The other guys, or some of them anyway, could be removed, or God knows what will happen to them. But ultimately, I think this arrangement they have in the Norfolk DA's office will be changed. In terms of the state police as an entity, I don't know. It's a political question. Do they disrupt it prior to a retrial? I don't know. I mean, I guess that's for the politicians
I mean,
to
you would
decide.
think like maybe I don't know, the union wouldn't step in and they're actually there to protect. So,
Oh yeah, the union is, look, police unions, and I don't have a problem with this, generally speaking. Police unions are amongst the strongest unions in America. Maybe the only one stronger is the teachers unions, which are like
yeah, they're
notoriously small.
crazy.
Yeah, no, they are like, I mean, you know how it is with someone has tenure, you can't do anything.
Oh yeah.
But police unions are very strong too, and they will defend their members as they're supposed to, whatever, to the very end. So they'll drag this out as long as they can, try to get their members paid for as long as they can, and that's what's interesting about Proctor. He's not even getting paid. If he took the Fifth Amendment and didn't testify in this case, he probably could have dragged this
Yeah.
out longer. He'd probably still be getting paid, would have done his family some better, and would have given himself some more leverage to deal with the feds. But, Proctor's going to Proctor, I guess, and, make a mess of things. But that's a very strong union, and nothing will happen quickly with these people. But I think Proctor is toast. I mean, that's happening.
He's done. Yeah. Amy in Boston has a question. She said, Mark, what do you think about Brian Albert and possibly Proctor being hired by a PA firm owned by a disgraced Boston police officer?
So everybody knows that story that came out yesterday. Disclaimer, asterisk, whatever. We don't know how true or untrue it is. I mean, we heard a report about it. Let's assume it's true. If this PI agency was actually doing work for the DA's office, which I think was part of that story, and then they hire Brian Albert, who is indisputably a witness in the case. Obviously, he testified. He is, I mean, it's his house. There's a dead body on his lawn.
Right.
He's in this. That's troubling. I mean, from a conflict standpoint, obviously. Then you add the angle of Proctor, and that takes the conflict to a whole nother level for, different reasons. One would assume that Michael Proctor, by a real prosecutor, would be viewed as a pariah, as damaged goods, as, Medusa, don't look at me or I'm going to turn to stone, get out of my life, go away. You're a disgrace. You have pretty much, well, there never really was a case against Karen Reed, but, much destroyed the Karen Reed case. God knows what you've done to these other cases that we've all heard about. But then you hear, well, what if, and again, what if, I don't know if this is true, but if the Norfolk DA, after all this, is helping Proctor land on his feet, what I find most troubling about that, beyond the optics, is why would you do that unless you were concerned, I got to keep this guy close and keep him on board. And now you're getting into that whole corruption angle. Am I worried about this guy saying things? He knows things. And this is the kind of thing, if it's true, I don't know if it is, it's a report, but that's the kind of thing that if the feds are watching this whole shit show, this is the kind of thing when you get into official corruption and they get suspicious about things that you would get very concerned about, because the Norfolk DA should be so angry with Proctor. Okay. He's a disgrace and a disaster, and he potentially killed multiple murder cases. And if instead the DA pities him to the point where I'm going to give you a soft landing at an investigative agency where Brian Albert works, for a Boston cop who's very loud about how guilty Karen Reed is and who's done work for us, the conflicts in that situation are suffocating. I mean, smothering to the point of suffocation, and no good reason would exist for Morrissey to do that unless he was concerned, I don't want this guy getting away from me. It's kind of like the whole keep your enemies closer, keep your friends close and keep your
Right.
enemies
Enemies
closer.
closer.
It's my second Godfather reference tonight, but that's kind of what it would
Get the
feel like,
cannolis.
because it makes no sense otherwise. They should be outraged at Proctor. So if any of this is true, it's very disturbing. If it's true.
Yeah. Do you think it's an opportunity now knowing that kind of Proctor's out on the fringe, that, the FBI could stop, have a conversation with him and say, hey, tell us, could you possibly tell us what you know about all of this? Do you think there could be a scenario like that too?
They can do whatever they want. The problem with Proctor is the time for him to have that conversation was before he perjured himself in Karen trial.
Yes.
So even if he were to cooperate with them now, his leverage is much less. You get less credit for a couple of reasons. One, you just perjured yourself at a murder trial, that you don't get credit.
Yeah.
But also bear something else in mind. Even if hypothetically Proctor were to spill the beans, so to speak, with the U.S. attorney now, a month or two after he just said the exact opposite under oath at a trial, never mind what the feds think. The feds are going to say, how am I using this guy as a witness? Your credibility is so bad, because hypothetically, if we were to use you as a witness in a prosecution against some of these other people, they're going to get lawyers and they're going to destroy Proctor.
Yeah.
You just told us at a trial 2 months ago that you didn't know anything. And so and again, I don't know that he would cooperate. I don't know if he has anything to cooperate or any of this. But all I can tell you is, to go back what I said a couple months ago, the guy should have taken the fifth, kept his options open. And if there was a conversation to be had with the feds, the time for him and his own selfish and family interest would have been about 2 months ago, as opposed to now. They'll probably take the meeting now, but his deal is 1,000 times worse than if he had done it 2 months ago.
Yeah, there was an article that came out the other day about the letters of Brady, about 13 or 14 letters of Brady. Could you explain that a little bit? Because I'm a little lost on, again, the legal terms.
Yeah,
essentially,
I mean, it's standard procedure. It's not surprising. So Brady is the famous 1963 case, Brady versus Maryland. It's the U.S. Supreme Court. It just stands for, there's a term of art in the law called Brady material that comes from that case. It just stands for the principle that there is a due process concept under the 14th Amendment, that the prosecution, if they are aware of any evidence that tends to favor the defendant, there is an affirmative obligation by the prosecution to notify the defense, as opposed to hide the ball and say they have to find it on their own. The theory, again, is part of the whole white hat theory.
Sure.
So there is, under Brady, there is also something called Giglio, which is another case which extended Brady, in which the U.S. Supreme Court in 1972, I believe, Giglio versus the United States, said that Brady also encompasses information that relates to credibility. So if there are key prosecution witnesses of which the prosecution is aware that their witnesses have credibility problems which could favor the defense, they are also obligated to disclose that information to the defense. So in the Karen Reed case, the DA clearly is aware that there is some degree of evidence that Proctor did unethical things, as you know, whether it's the text messages, whether he's alleged to have been corrupt and do this and do that, in which they disclosed to lawyers on other cases in which Proctor is a key witness, that they are aware of this and we're under our Brady obligation. We're notifying you of this, which is going to lead those lawyers to ask more questions, as they should. Primarily, to me, the real thing that's going to be really interesting about the Brady disclosure is none of these lawyers are just going to accept that letter and shrug their shoulders and say, gee, thanks, because they know all this from the news. Okay. The real interesting thing is going to be to peel the onion back and dig deeper and say, well, in the case you just watched a couple of months ago or whatever it was, this guy said he sent all these messages because he was, upset and traumatized by this, horrible murder. Okay. And as you know, by murder standards, not to demean what happened to John O'Keefe,
right?
From an emotional standpoint, from a police officer, a grizzled detective, if you will, the John O'Keefe case is not a traumatic case. Every murder or death is bad, but it's what they perceive the hit and run. That's not, by murder cop standards, horrifying. It's not good. It's not horrifying. But his testimony was, I was so upset about this and so traumatized that, I lost control of my emotions and sent these terrible messages. By the way, as I recall, 3 separate groups of people. I was so emotional that I had to send messages to my high school buddies, like right away. I had to send messages to Buchanan, Tully, or not
Superiors,
Tully, whoever. And then also, my sister, who I, talk about, I wish she'd kill herself and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that testimony on its face is ridiculous. But what I would do if I'm one of these lawyers is say, let's take it at face value. If he did that, as the commenter is saying, for 8 months, okay, he was so traumatized for 8 months. And what about the other murder case he handled, in which, Brian Walsh is the obvious example. He's alleged to have chopped up his wife and discarded her. I'm thinking that might traumatize you too. Did you send texts about that to the same group of people? This case that was in court today or yesterday with the doctor, same thing. So they're going to start asking more questions and start demanding things. Lawyers will, I don't want to get into specifics, but you can probably envision a scenario where lawyers on other cases, witness intimidation cases in which these guys are witnesses, would also in the future demand information about, witnesses from the state police who would be relevant witnesses in those cases. So that will happen too at some point, I assure you. But this is going to happen again and again. And it really comes down to how important is Proctor and these other guys in these cases. And if they're important, this is a disaster. And it goes right back to your last point, which is, how is the DA's office not appalled by this? Now, maybe they are. I don't know. But if they're helping him land on his feet, it really raises a lot of questions.
Yeah, do you think that's why we hear a lot about in the media when we started to hear about the Proctor suspension and said firing, that, everything that was talked about in his specific case was, we only heard about the text messages. It had nothing to do with, the supposed shoddy, investigation in the Karen Reed case. I find it funny that they just narrowed in on that. You hear it about in the mainstream media too. Oh, it's just Proctor text messages. That's what's, put him in this position, because you look at it and to your point, you start looking, all these other key cases that he was involved in. If there's shoddy police work there, well, that's a big problem.
But I would also suggest to you this: the Proctor text messages are indicative of poor police work, corruption,
conduct,
and other things. So, on the one hand, put aside the horrible, horrible things he said about Karen Reed, her physical appearance, her physical condition, his opinion of her, his opinion of her lawyer. Put all that aside. But he's also having back and forth about intimidating the medical examiner into giving him an opinion that he wants in order to justify a murder indictment. That is bad. And in fact, that's worse from a lawyer's perspective. That actually has more value. That goes to the heart of his investigative integrity and the evidence's integrity. There are text messages where he basically is talking about, you want to give me a gift, well, give it to my wife. That is per se corruption, literally. Okay. That is per se corrupt. I'm offering you a gift for your work. And instead of saying, I can't do that, don't do that, give it to my wife, that is per se corrupt. I'm getting a benefit from someone with an interest in Karen Reed being prosecuted for my personal benefit. That's corrupt. That's the kind of thing that is a deprivation of honest services and arguably is even some form of federal fraud if they want to dig into this. So the people in the media who say that the messages don't address the investigation, that's not accurate. It totally addresses the investigation. And also, you can't look at this in a vacuum. You look at the messages where he says, oh, don't worry about the homeowner. He's a Boston cop. He's fine. And then you see Proctor. Now combine that with Proctor's testimony where he says, oh, well, he was missing a shoe and he was lying in the middle of the lawn. So it must have been a hit and run. And then he ordered a tow truck before he even saw the car, of which he never photographed and never did this. So you can't look at the messages in that standpoint in a vacuum. It's all part of the tunnel vision, the corruption, the poor police work. But you see that a lot in like flyby media. They don't dig into the weeds like guys like you do, and they just, they get the headlights, they get the cliff notes and see what they see. But if you can get past all the horrible, horrible things that he said about Karen Reed personally, and you look at the actual other messages about the medical examiner, about Brian Albert not being involved, and about the gift for his wife, that completely relates to the integrity of the investigation entirely.
Yeah. And I think it's funny that you say that about the gifting. And I completely forgot about that. But I think even in some of the recent, the recent information that came out about the CDL scandal here that we had in Massachusetts, there was a lot of gifting. And I think like that secondhand gifting, they were calling them golden handshakes, and a lot of this stuff was going on where CDL licenses were essentially being handed out to people that didn't test for them or didn't deserve them and weren't qualified enough. And there were gifts that were being, given back, or the scenario that you were just kind of describing. My question now too is that let's just say that all of this does come out, and they do find, obviously, I mean, we know, but Proctor, had this significant impact on this case of, shitty police work and planting evidence. How far does this, how far does this all go back to cases that he was involved in? I mean, does every single case have the potentiality to be questioned now, or is there some kind of law? Or, what happens?
Well, there's no law per se. I mean, I think what you're going to see are these lawyers who demand more information and are going to want to know, are there other text messages in other cases in which whether it relates to the exact case that these lawyers are involved in, or is there any indicia of him taking gifts for investigative favors, favoring people in an investigation, or doing other things. And, look, credibility is always important. That's why it's considered Brady Giglio material. I mean, a credibility of a major police witness is always an issue. And these lawyers are going to be simply saying, if there is bad evidence which clearly discredits Proctor, who's a major witness, we ought to know about that. And the law is going to say, yes, you should. So this is potentially a disaster. To me, the only issue is how important is Proctor in any of these individual cases. That I have no idea.
Right.
If he's kind of on the fringes of some of these cases, then the DA's attitude is, we're just not going to call him. It doesn't matter. But if he has something like, the Karen Reed case, where he's the guy who, finds evidence that reveals itself and all of that nonsense. Well, then that's a problem potentially, depending on the other factors in the case. So he's a cancer to the prosecution. I mean, and the question is, how far does he metastasize? That's the issue.
Lead detective in the Brian Walsh case. That's pretty scary. I mean, that guy.
I think the word they're using now is case manager.
Oh, case manager. Oh, got it. Let me just get to this. Dr. Jen, thank you so much for your generosity. A $50 super chat says, thanks, Mark and Brian, for unwavering commitment to seeking justice. If this goes to a retrial, I hope that the medical experts can clearly emphasize the cause of John O'Keefe's death wasn't intermediate.
I don't think they're going to be able to do that, but the reality is that's a problem for the DA more than the defense, because they have the burden of proof. And as you know from the first trial, they couldn't even classify the death a homicide. They couldn't say it definitely or was consistent with this, meaning a car crash, but not consistent with being assaulted. And if you have, the old, when you were kids, you'd say a tie goes to the runner, when you play sports.
Right.
A tie goes to the defense because burdens of proof beyond a reasonable doubt are on the prosecutor. And one of the most stunning things at all, and to me, if you want to talk about whether this was a corrupt prosecution or what the hell were these people doing, the fact that they couldn't get their own medical examiner to classify the death a homicide and go beyond that and say it was consistent with a car accident, but not consistent with this, meaning an assault or this or that. I mean, no sane prosecutor is taking that case to trial if they can't even exclude the reasonable doubt based on the injuries that caused the death. Then you add in the ARCA, the butt dials, the other stuff, and you say, why are these people prosecuting? And you start to think these people are corrupt.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if you can answer any of these questions, but I'd love to ask you anyway, and I won't be offended if you say you can't speak on it. So recently you've come on board on Aiden Turtleboy Carney's team. Any developments or what is going to be your role in his cases going forward?
Well, I mean, there's another lawyer, Tim Bradle, who's very well established, as you know. I'm joining the team, and we'll collaborate, and do whatever's best for the client. I mean, I'm here to help, so I have no demands or we'll figure that all out. The reality is there is a very skilled lawyer who was in place for more than a year before I was brought in. A lot of things have been happening. I'm just here to help in any way I can, and whatever that role is, that'll all be sorted out. In terms of what's going to happen, it's no secret that part of the problem with that case, and I'm speaking in a general sense, I don't want to get specific.
Yep. Yeah, of course.
That prosecution is being brought under statutes that are really troubling. Okay. Like generally, this is not a specific thing as relates to the client specifically, but those statutes appear to say that anyone who causes anyone, emotional harm as perceived by the alleged victim of the harm, who is either a witness or someone else who possesses information or could be a witness or is related to a witness, that could constitute witness tampering, witness intimidation, if a prosecutor says, well, they must be doing that with the intent to obstruct justice or cause them not to testify. And the question becomes, what does that even mean? If you look at the Massachusetts statute, people like us who just talk about a criminal case on any given day, are we witness tampering when we criticize potential witnesses at a retrial in the Karen Reed case and say, we believe they perjured themselves in the first trial. We believe that they're not credible. They get upset. They see that and they get upset. They get caused emotional harm, whatever the hell that means. And then, are we trying to prevent them from testifying because we believe Karen Reed is innocent and shouldn't be retried. So am I subject to prosecution under the Massachusetts statute? At the way it's written, yes. Are you? Yes. Are all these other grifters? Yes. But also,
You have free speech.
look at look, there are lunatics who during the Karen Reed trial were screaming at her.
Yeah.
Okay. As she's walking into court. Now
Yeah.
let's unpack this for a
Isn't
minute.
that intimidation?
Karen Reed is a potential witness. Now, she
Oh.
doesn't have to testify, but under the statute, she is a potential witness, okay? Or certainly someone who knows information and could be a witness, and she's being attacked and called a murderess, a dirtbag. She's being accused of all these horrible things. Could that cause her emotional harm? Sure.
Mhm.
What if that influences her willingness to testify? Okay. And you know who I'm talking about. These people they're not bashful. We'll get more into this in legal filings down the line, perhaps. But
Mm.
are those people guilty of witness intimidation under the statute? Absolutely. Now,
Oh.
am I suggesting they should be prosecuted? Not necessarily, but should anyone be prosecuted if you're acting in a journalistic capacity, trying to express your First Amendment rights, either your opinion or First Amendment news gathering, asking questions or sharing your opinion? Is that the kind of thing that, should result in you being prosecuted? You saw it even yesterday, those protesters from Canton who were, protesting in front of the pizza shop. And, that's one of the counts in Aiden's case, is yelling
Yep.
at the same pizza place. All those cases were dismissed because a judge found there was no probable cause. Well,
It took him a year.
but if there's no probable cause there, you can fill in the blank
Oh, you're
analytically.
right.
So, there's going to be a lot of discussion about the First Amendment conflicting with the Massachusetts statute and whether it's simply too broad. I mean, if you look at other states' statutes, and from my own bias, I'm obviously more familiar with New York. When you talk about witness intimidation and witness tampering, it's more classic and traditional what you think witness intimidation is, such as, I'm going to break your knees if you testify. Yeah, that's
Right.
witness intimidation.
Yeah.
I will offer you a bribe if you don't testify. Yeah, yes. That sort of thing. If you testify, I will tell everyone you did this, that, and the other. Yeah, that's witness intimidation. Is expressing your view that someone is involved in a crime, but who's is potentially a witness intimidation. And you also have to remember that, some of them are police officers who are claiming they were intimidated, including Michael Proctor is a, named alleged victim in that case.
Yeah. It was, like I said, if we're going to talk about witness intimidation, there was one said FBI agent this morning coming at Karen Reed. So, I mean, wouldn't that be witness intimidation? And it's in print. So,
well, you're talking about her piggybacking on, I think I know what you're talking about, the tweet of the individual involved in the case that we're not, I don't want to talk about, and then accusing him of being credibly accused of various sex crimes, and then gratuitously throwing Karen Reed into that conversation,
into it. Right.
Which makes no sense whatsoever. Yeah. Could that cause Karen Reed emotional harm? Sure, it could. Could that impact her willingness to, oh my God, I don't want to testify because this is what they're going to say about me? It could. Under the Massachusetts statute, is that potentially witness intimidation? It is. It shouldn't be, but it is. And that's the problem. The statute is unconstitutional.
And you're also, throwing, defaming someone and possibly intimidating that person as, your client, as, throwing that out there too. So let me just get to this really. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mark.
I was just gonna say, you could go back several months ago, forget this case. When we're all analyzing the trial, okay, you could take a witness like Jennifer McCabe. All right.
Right.
She testified over the course of a couple days. Now, if someone like you and me had a conversation after her first day of testimony and said, she's the worst witness I've ever seen. She has no credibility. She's probably lying. Her demeanor is terrible. I believe she's perjuring herself. I believe if she testifies like this on day 2, that she may very well get charged with perjury. Could that cause her to get upset? Sure, it could. I mean, that's just my opinion as a legal
Right.
analyst, right? Could that make her upset? It could. What if that makes her say, well, shit, I don't want to testify now? Am I now witness intimidating? Under the Massachusetts
Right.
statute, you could make the argument that that's the case. The statute is unconstitutional. No one with no serious person would say that a lawyer analyzing that on the internet is intimidating the witness by just saying, this is what I saw, this is what I think. Okay. Now, there are people who are perhaps more provocative than you and me, more
Yeah.
aggressive in their
Sure.
opinions, more entertaining in their opinions, but analytically, it's not that different.
Yeah. No, I agree. Let me just get to this really quick. Jury verdict room, thank you for the $25 to join tonight to help out my favorite grifters. Love that with the wink. But how did this not get tossed the day it was clear Proctor lied on the stand and was definitely biased in his investigation? It's a mystery to us too. I mean,
don't know.
this is what we've been going over for the last, I don't know, 10 months, ever since I jumped on this, 11 months or almost a year ago now. And, I don't know. I just don't know what those jurors didn't see. I mean, it was pretty obvious and clear to me. But you got to think, though, too, a lot of people don't understand that, we had almost a year when we were talking about this, and you only had jurors that jumped in that were only 10 weeks. So they saw a lot of information in a short amount of time. But to sort through that and say, hey, the Commonwealth is correct on this, where an accident wasn't even proven, to put Karen Reed out there on the one charge, I don't get it.
I think that's a fair point that they only had it for 10 weeks. And also over the course of 10 weeks, they heard everything once. Okay.
Yeah.
People who watch, YouTube shows and whatever could go back and watch and discuss and analyze. Some people take notes. They put posts online saying this is happening, but a juror is hearing it once. Maybe they take a few notes, their notes that they took, they're not evidence. So they're not, they can't write down anything that happens in the summation because the summations are not evidence, and they may not absorb everything or recall everything. And, don't forget that over the course of 10 weeks, some of the information that they were subjected to was so boring, so irrelevant. And is there a risk that it swallows up some of the larger points? It could.
You think that's by design, Mark? Some of it was to draw that out and go, was it raining? Was it snowing? Was it,
I don't know. I just think he's boring and kind of drones on. Look, I don't think the prosecutor's strategy was let me try this murder case over the course of 10 weeks by asking about the weather, because that's going to make everyone forget, the real evidence. I've been very critical of Lally about a lot of things. It's hard for me to believe that he literally was trying to drone on. I think he's just a very boring personality who doesn't have the greatest trial skills in the world. I don't look at it as a strategic thing per se, to
right.
just bore you to death so that you'll forget. Now, people may disagree, but I just think, he's kind of he is what he is. I don't think so.
Yeah. So where do you see this going, Mark? Coming up, obviously we're waiting for Judge Canoni's decision. I'm going to pretty much say that she's going to say no. Do we start going into pretrial hearings? And do we get to a trial? Does this stop? And I know I know you don't like the prediction business. You're trying to get out of that. So I'm sorry I just put you on.
No, it's fine. I look, whether first of all, I don't know why the DA is putting everybody through the process that's happening now, because if they retry, let's assume they get permission to retry Karen Reed for murder. Just because they're allowed to doesn't mean they should.
Should.
And if they
Ethically.
retry her for murder, then these people are dumber than dumb, because you have to look at it from the standpoint, number one, we all understand the jury acquitted. Now, whether that's a legal thing that's going to result in the dismissal of that count or not by the court, in a practical sense, the jury is telling you, Mr. DA, we acquitted, and there's no murder case. It stinks. Okay. So get rid of the murder count, get rid of all those meaningless witnesses. So even if they retry her on any of these counts, I don't know how they're going to do it, because I don't know how they're going to use Proctor, right? I don't know what's going on with Buchanan. And he's really important for a couple of reasons. They're the two guys who have to tell this ridiculous nonsense story about the taillight and vouchering the evidence and securing the evidence and doing all the things that they did. And then Buchanan has the other unfortunate thing for him, which is he's already locked in explaining this ridiculous testimony about the video that we now know was flipped and inverted and all of that. So those guys are going to be problematic witnesses for them, right? Trooper Paul, I think, is out. I just can't, they can't be that dumb to seriously bring him back. And by the way, if I would have to believe that Trooper Paul, who for his own self-dignity would say, I'm not qualified, I'm not doing this again.
I'm not going to do this again.
No.
Right.
You can subpoena me and I'm still not going to do it. And I double dog dare you to hold me in contempt, that kind of thing. So they're not going to have an expert to challenge the ARCA guys. The FBI is still going on. They'll probably release more information. The defense now has all the transcripts and it knows what every prosecution witness is going to say. They have the ability to kind of maybe do some things they didn't do in the first case, change up a little bit, which I think they will. I think there's a few things that can, even though these guys are top shelf lawyers, that when they look at it, they'll say, you know what, maybe we should have done this and do this a little different. Now, juxtapose that against the DA. What are they going to do different? What are they going to do? Are they going to, the joke I made the other night was, are they going to go to the witness factory and buy a witness?
We didn't even get a jury for this now. I mean,
I don't know how you're
worldwide.
Which is also part of the problem. If they think they're going to retry her for murder, even if they're allowed to, every prospective juror in January, if that's really when this trial happens, who says, okay, we're here for this case and it's a murder case, they're all going to look at each other and say, she was acquitted of murder. What's wrong with these people? We know that. We watched everything. What's wrong with these prosecutors? So I just logistically don't see how they're going to do it. And now, look, we've called them zombie prosecutors in the past because they just keep coming. They're going to want to try her for everything, but I don't see logically or logistically how they're going to do it. I don't. So I don't think there's going to be a retrial. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
they're going to want to do it. I just don't see how they can literally do it.
Yeah, it's, and going back to the jury and finding a jury. I mean, there's literally not one person in the state of Massachusetts right now that doesn't know about Karen Reed. No. I mean, it is the biggest topic of conversation. I mean, right. I hear it just in the general public when I'm out on the street or in the post office or wherever I'm a supermarket. I mean, there's someone talking about it in some capacity.
But it's worse than that, because if you said to prospective jurors, at the supermarket or whoever,
sure,
okay, have you heard of that case? Yes. What do you know about it? And what they're going to say is this:
corruption.
This is the case of the woman who's accused of running down her cop boyfriend, and I heard she got framed. That's part of the narrative. Okay. In other words, if you heard of this case in Massachusetts, I agree with you. 100% of the people have heard, are close to it. Not 100, but 90% of the people
Right.
are heard. And if you said to those 90%, what have you heard about that case?
Framed.
More than half of those people are going to tell you, I heard she got framed.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
that's part of their pre-trial bias. And, you've heard these kind of, well, maybe somebody should move for a different venue. Why would the defense do that? There's no reason to. The public favors her. They
Right.
do. I mean, some of these trolls and other people are loud, but they're pretty small in number. They're just very loud and obnoxious, but they're not a high percentage of the population as far as I can tell. So I don't think the defense is going to move to get this out of Norfolk County. They have a very good jury pool there. It's just, it sucks that they have to go there from California, but whatever.
Yeah. I mean, if they move it anywhere in and around Massachusetts, it doesn't matter. People are, to our point is they've heard about this. I mean, everybody across the world now has heard about this.
Yep.
And I don't see it happening. I just
No,
don't see
I
it
really
happening.
don't think there's going to be a retrial, but that's not because the DA is going to do the right thing. They're going to want a retrial. I just don't think when push comes to shove, there's going to be the ability to do so. I mean,
So let's go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just want to say they did it this time by holding their nose and saying, we know what the ARCA guys are going to say. Who cares? We know what Proctor is going to say. Who cares? But now you add in the fact the trial ended in July. Okay. It's August. What has happened since August? Okay. 3 of the critical state troopers are in deep shit. Okay. Already. Okay. A Canton police officer named Albert, by the way, basically had his gun and badge taken away because he's a dope who gets drunk and can't keep his. This has been an unmitigated disaster just since the first case ended. We haven't heard more from the feds. You haven't heard more of this other stuff. It's only going to get worse. So if it was
and then
bad
you had jurors that came forward, add that to the
right,
conversation too.
You have absolutely. But, as bad as it was the first time around, it didn't really get out that these cops were under investigation or in trouble. Now they are. So it's just awful for the prosecution going forward. It's that much worse already, and it's only going to get worse. There's nothing they can do to make this case better unless they find an expert who obliterates the ARCA people, which will never happen.
Yeah. Let's just do this. Worst case scenario. Karen Reed goes back to she goes to a retrial. She's convicted. This goes to appeal. Does the appellate court say, no, this is bullshit and throws this thing out?
Well, they don't generally overturn jury verdicts. I mean,
wow.
Jurors are the fact finders. So appellate courts are going to be very loath to literally say you're an idiot and you made the wrong decision on the facts. What appellate courts do is overrule on the law. And so you have to wait and see. You'd have to wait and see what happens at the second trial and whether there are any legal decisions. I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I think this is an exercise in very unlikely to be the case, because the idea that 12 people are going to find her guilty of any
happen.
It's just not going to happen. That's right. It's just not going to happen.
It will never happen. And I feel strongly too, and I've said this on my show 1,000 times. The Commonwealth knows that they're never going to find a jury, to our point, is going to convict Karen Reed. So let's just keep her, dragging her back in. Now we'll just financially bankrupt her. That's essentially what in my opinion, they're trying to do now, is just really bury this down until we get to a point where we cannot push forward anymore, and we've made her exhaust all her resources and money, and essentially just bury her name and then walk away from this thing at some point.
I guess, but there's so much public support and so many people donating and doing whatever that it's hard for me to believe that, as astronomical as her legal fees, I mean, doing this for a living, I mean, I don't know what her situation is. I could guess, I'm not going to, on this.
I've heard a number.
Well, I don't. I have not, but I can
Yeah.
guess, and it's probably in the six figures. Okay, at this point, for a
Mhm.
lot of reasons. But on the other hand, the donations appear to be steady, frequent, constant. So many people are outraged and apparently donating. And the idea that, that would stop and she would, go bankrupt and, lose the ability to defend herself or whatever. It's just, no way.
Yeah.
No way. By the way, what these lawyers of this caliber, okay, and also of this level of investment and this level of character, okay. And again, don't listen to the trolls who tell you that Alan Jackson and David and Eddie are bad guys. They're not. These are good guys, okay. They're dedicated. It's not about money. I mean, obviously they're making a living, but these are I know guys like these guys, work with guys like these guys. This is how we all are. They're invested, okay. There's no chance they're walking away over you're a little late in payment, or what are we going to do. They're going to see this through. They're going to get her through this. They're going to win, and then all the other stuff, assuming there is any financial stuff, would take care of itself after. There is no chance that lawyers of this caliber, of that character, would ever just walk away. They're going to see this through no matter what. And if the DA thinks we're just going to slow roll this and bankrupt her and break up her legal team, there's no chance that's going to happen. No chance.
Yeah, David Yanetti's all right in my book. He took down 2 child predators and murderers back in the early 90s. Jeffrey Curley was a case here in Boston, Massachusetts. Charles Janes and Salvatore Sakari, and he was the prosecutor in that case. And that's a great that he took down those predators, and they will never see the light of day ever again. So,
no. I mean, look, not all, but most successful defense attorneys, we all started as prosecutors. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Alan Jackson.
Same with Alan. Everybody knows he prosecuted Phil Spector. And, the race car guy who was killed in his driveway. I forget his name. Whatever. I forget. But the point is,
Mickey Thompson.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, that was a big case, not a few years ago. These guys are like high-end guys, but these are character guys. Okay.
They care.
That's exactly the point. They fully believe in what they're doing. Okay. They're not getting paid to say, this is what we think happened. They believe it. They're invested in it. They're defending someone that they believe is innocent. That's not always the case. I mean, you still represent people, but you can see it by watching it. They believe what they're doing. They're invested in it. They care, and they're going to see it through, and they're going to win.
Yeah, they're not. Listen, I don't see that. This whole like when this all ended. Oh, is Alan Jackson going to come back? Is David Yanni come? Yes,
that was ridiculous.
They're going to come back.
I don't know why anybody would ever think for a minute that somebody. And again, you have to know how we do this for a living and the way you're wired. The idea that Alan Jackson would get a hung jury on a case like this with everything he put in it and say, all right, see you later. I'm out of here. That was never going to happen.
No.
Okay. Never. The only way that he would ever not be a part of a second trial is if the client said, I don't want you to be a part of the second trial, which of course would never happen either, because that would be crazy because he's outstanding.
The best.
So, yeah. And she knows that. And her family knows that. And her advisors know that. So that the idea that he was ever going to walk away, never. No chance.
Yeah. All good stuff, Mark. Listen, I appreciate you. I'm going on like 3 hours. I'm going to shut this one down for tonight. But I appreciate you impromptu jumping on here with me and Maz and staying on the last hour here. And it's been a little while since we've connected, and I'd love to, do another one of these soon if we could. And listen, we'll see what happens. What do you think? Real quick before I go, when do we start? I guess seeing more pre-trial hearings. Does this start coming up soon? And we go through this entire, it's just so crazy. we're literally going to go through this entire, and I say we because we've been through it all, but we're literally going to go through this entire process again. How soon does this all start happening? Is it happen after the next decision that Judge, Bev gives, or do they start putting things on the calendar here soon?
Well, she's going to issue her ruling. Potentially, either side could appeal. If she were to rule for the defense, it would be suicide for the DA to appeal. I mean, that the optics of that would be terrible. But assuming that process were to go on, that would take several months. But also, in terms of pretrial hearings, a lot of them are done. You don't relitigate a lot of stuff that's already been decided pretrial. So when you're doing a retrial, it is a more streamlined process. There's still stuff they have to hash out and deal with, which will happen over the next several months, but it wouldn't be the same level of, pretrial craziness that you saw, before the first trial. And again, are they going to retry? I mean, at some point, you have to decide.
I can say this, we were out at one of the standouts, probably now, 2 weeks ago. Karen Reed did some rounds and, touch base in some of those standouts. And she was just positive, smiling, seemed very calm, in good, good standing, and was just really supportive and happy that people are out there. And I just have to say this. I mean, amongst all the controversy that this woman has gone through, this, individual, this person, she hasn't cracked once. And that is such an amazing spirit. And I think, and I think I have to say this, the day that I got to spend in court and meet Karen for the first time and her legal team, Alan Jackson said, had a little bit of a speech. I was with Will the Glarer. And, Alan pulled us aside and said, hey, look, I have to say this to all of you and all of the supporters out there. If you guys weren't doing what you were doing, and that crowd, those crowds and the supporters that form outside the courtroom and the reporting of Turtleboy, this would be a completely different trial. And I think he meant that, more in a supportive way for Karen. She might have broken down by now with everything that's gone through, but it's just incredible to watch her, has not flinched once through this entire thing, and in such a amazing spirit to watch.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, psychologically, if you're being accused of murder and doing something terrible, particularly murder of your boyfriend that you've never had a chance to even, mourn or analyze or grieve or whatever, because immediately you're accused of doing this terrible thing that your position is you didn't do, to have the amount of support publicly out there, that is emboldening, obviously. And that also for the lawyers too. It's not just for the client. I mean, as a lawyer, trials are a grind. They are. And don't forget, for these lawyers, it's a road game, right? I mean, they're living 3,000 miles from home, whatever it is. And it can be a slog. It's 10 weeks away from your family, all that, you're working 15 hours a day,
living out of a hotel,
living in a hotel, a nice hotel.
Of course.
But the point is, but you show up every day and you see that, and that just recharges the battery.
Yeah.
It's just, it gets you going. It gets the client going. That's a real thing.
Yeah.
So what he said is entirely true, but also for the lawyers, not just her, to get them fully, jacked up to do justice, as they say.
Yeah, and even now you still even hear it. Dave and Yannetti the other day after the pretrial hearing, he said, I can't believe it. I've never seen anything like this. And it's like, what do you say? It's like when the Patriots get announced at the Super Bowl. It's just insane.
It's crazy. It is. And look, the other thing is this. It is what it is, and maybe this is what pisses off a lot of the trolls or not. If you looked at it in isolation, you'd say, woman charged with murder of a police officer. Normally, you would say the hatred for that defendant is going to be off the charts. I mean, you're going to just get crucified in the media, everywhere. And in this situation, you know, and there were some critics, obviously, but to have that level of support when you're charged for murder of a police officer is unheard of, which also probably is a sign that, man, this is a bad case, because nobody favors someone who killed a cop, obviously. And especially a guy like John O'Keefe, who by all accounts was, you know, a good, decent,
Yeah.
popular guy. And, you know, of course, just because you think she's innocent, this is the biggest problem with the trolls, bar none. They can't grasp the concept that people who think Karen Reed is innocent is somehow disrespectful to John O'Keefe, when if she's not guilty, then justice for John O'Keefe does not include convicting someone who's not guilty of killing him. You know, you in order to get justice for him, you have to get the right person.
Right.
And, you know, people can agree or disagree whether she is, but why they assume that anybody who supports her innocence is disrespecting John O'Keefe, that makes no sense at all. They're just, I mean, they're not being intellectually honest about what's going on. I mean, I don't think that's a complicated principle. I mean, people agree or disagree, but the bottom line is many people think she's not guilty. That doesn't mean they're shitting on John O'Keefe. They think
Right.
she's not responsible for his death. That's all.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. Real quick, last one before we head out here. Scott's saying, Brian, ask about the mass SJC appeals.
Well, somebody's going to take it there if they don't like the decision they get from Canoni. I mean, clearly, if the defense loses, they're going to attempt to have this hashed out. If the prosecution loses, they probably will too, because they have the worst judgment. Like, they never have any self-awareness. And the reality is, if the judge were to dismiss these counts, she's doing them a favor, really. They won't see it that way, but if she's telling them you're not charging murder, you're really doing them a favor. And they probably will try to appeal and drag this out and look terrible. But yeah, I mean, the appellate process will take a few months for sure, at least, even if it's accelerated, which it would be.
Well, Mark, thank you so much, like I said, for jumping on and doing this impromptu. You know, I have to say that through this entire experience, for me, you know, I've been blessed to meet some really great people, and you are one of them. And I, you know, I do appreciate it. You know, I've got to meet you outside the courthouse and shake your hand, and that was an honor. And, you know, hopefully someday we'll get to do that again. You know,
Well, I guess I'm going to be out there a lot more than
yeah. So
back then in the next
yeah,
set.
we'll have to all go out and grab dinner sometime and chat. I'd love to do that. And again, you know, I've met so many amazing people, all the people that have come to this platform and watched the lives. I really appreciate that. The people that continue to support Turtleboy and Karen Reed, you're all amazing. The subscribers, the members, the people that contribute, and those people that just grind outside the courtroom and stand in the heat and the cold. It just does not affect you, you know, and you're real rock stars and champions. And all the panel guests that I've had on this show and all the wonderful people that I've gotten to meet. It's been such a blessing and an opportunity. And to let everybody know, I will have Todd McGee on my show on Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope you all can join us, and maybe we'll have Mark back here soon. We'll have another one of these conversations.
All right. Take care. Good
All right,
seeing you.
Mark, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. All right,
Take care.
everybody, we're going to hit the outro. Have a good
Okay.
night and take care. Bye-bye. I was just going to say really quick, I love this idea Mark can come to the studio. That would be great. Mark, if you're still watching, when you come out here, I'd love for you to come in to the studio, and the invitation is there. So anyway, now I'm going to hit the outro. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. I'll see everybody back on Friday at 5 p.m. I hope you all can make it in the studio, and I'd love to hear his perspective on all of this. So again, now I'm going to really go. Have a good night. Bye-bye.